Good day, everyone. Welcome to the weekly note of GTC Traders. This is a feature we do each week, as you can tell if you click on the little category for the GTC weekly note. This is something that we do each week. If you are new, I am the senior partner of a separate private proprietary firm, and we decided, hey, how about we put our weekly note up? We're not by any means the only one that does a weekly note. This is something that's very common among many firms, weekly note or a daily note. And we thought, hey, how about we just make this real easy on ourselves? How about we just copy and paste sort of our weekly note from our private proprietary firm and put it over here on GTC Traders. So that is what we do. And the article itself has all of the vagaries usually of different thoughts as far as the economic calendar for that week and what we see in interest rates and various markets. If you're sort of curious about a weekly note, if you go to the GTC Traders YouTube page and you look at something like the playlists, so you click over at the playlists, come down here, go to the GTC weekly and daily note playlist, look at the full playlist. The first three, maybe even the first four videos really describe why so many firms do this. Okay, so why so many firms have a weekly and a daily note, really what is the value of a weekly and daily note, what it is and what it is not. So that's just for folks who are new. And then, as I will now, I usually yabber on about the vagaries of each week. So what is today? Today is January the 16th, 2024. Across the United States, it is very, very cold and snowed in. Some parts of you, like Florida, are getting away with it, but I'm in southern Appalachia, and I got to tell you, we are not used to this, and nor are we able to deal with it. We are snowed in. Temperatures are getting down to single digits tonight. And this is the southern end of Appalachia. So it is getting brutally cold. And we're just not able to deal with it. And it's not just a matter of toughen up, right? I mean, I lived in the Detroit area for decades and decades. And the cold and the snow there is quite different. So if you get, 9 inches of snow, I think we got 8 or 9 inches and more is on the way here. In Michigan, it's like, okay, we'll plow it and then get on the roads and do your best. Well, yeah, because it's flat. But down here, it's not flat. There's a lot of hills. There are hollers in this area that you simply cannot travel because the road's too winding. And if you go through that guardrail, that's a good 150-foot drop down. So, icy here is much different than icy somewhere that's flat. So I'm at the home office. We got the fireplace going, candles burning, sort of tucked in, and just having a day here at home, and actually probably a few days, as it's going to be just brutally, brutally cold down here, and everything's sort of locked down, everyone's unable to travel down here. Again, that has more to do with geography. Talking about locked down, frozen down, looking at the markets. I was telling someone this recently. And I've tried to enunciate this in the past. I'm not sure how good of a job I've done on it. There is a difference from having a bias on a particular market and maybe what your position is in that market. And then you're just viewed globally, sort of on a global macro sense, right? It's very infrequent, quite honestly, that all of those match up at exactly the same time. Your book positioning, sort of a global macro view. And especially when I say the book positioning isn't going to be the same, it's because if you're working in a 0 to 15-day periodicity or even 30-day periodicity, well, global macro is more of like a 9-month periodicity, right? At best, maybe a 1-year periodicity. So those are two different periodicities, and then you get into the fractal nature of markets. Well, you're going to have different positions, right? And I've talked about how that also affects your bias view of particular markets. So for those reasons, it's infrequent that sort of everything lines up. Your view on a 1-year periodicity, how that matches to your book positioning, which may be a 0-day to, depends on the strat that's being run, to 30 to 45-day periodicity, to your bias, which may be, your bias on a market may last a month or two. But lately, I cannot recall, and this is what I was telling someone else, I cannot recall the time I've been so delta neutral in my global macro view, as well across so many different markets, And at the same time, that sort of matches my book positioning in the portfolio. And I mean, even if you look at the GTC sample portfolio, those longer term holds we bought, I've sort of been developing this delta neutral view, because even those longer term holds, even though they're doing well, right, they've only been half-size positions, and it's not all of the long-term holds that I buy. So there's like a good 12 more to go that I'm just not purchasing right now, and I'm not even purchasing them at half size. And then you look at like option positioning, I'm just very, very delta neutral at the moment. Oil has been locked up tighter in the snare drum, just not moving. We're not getting breakouts in any direction or the other. I would have loved, and I think I've mentioned this in the stream, is that I would have loved to put on a position here, but there's just no position to put on. At least the way I work, anybody that's been selling delta neutral positions here has banked, but I just like more of a push in one direction or the other before I put something on. So just, I don't know, my look across global macro, my book positioning, my bias on various markets. I think the last time I was this delta neutral was 2015. So what is that, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? So it's been quite a while. Of course, this all fits as well, and it does not contradict something I've said for decades. I think the first time I was saying this publicly was back in 2008. If you've developed a good, multi-strat book, you don't have to care where the market's going. Like, people will ask me, where do you think the stock market's going? And it's not just this particular time period where I don't have even a bias, but just in general, people will ask me that all the time. Where do you think the market's going? Where do you think the stock market's going? And my answer is always the same. I don't know, and I don't need to know. I don't care, and I don't need to care. Who cares where the market's going, right? That's not the way I position myself. So eventually, this deadlock will break one way or the other. And, I'll have a bias, and then there's book positioning, then there's global macro views. It will break, but when it does break, I'm still not going to care. Who cares what direction the market's going? If you know what you're doing, you don't need to know, and you don't need to care. And that still applies even when the market's locked up as it has been. Although we've got a few real bright nuggets. We've had that Dullard Kroger sitting there whiffling around like a 2-year-old at wiffle ball, just doing a whole lot of nothing. But as I just had on the screen here a second ago, you have Costco in the portfolio. And another one, I haven't been able to get it into the GTC sample portfolio, but I would have loved to, and I didn't. I haven't yet, but if you've got it, congratulations. CBOE, thing has just been a stinking rocket ship. So, you can have CBOE or Costco in your portfolio, and you still look like a stud, even with half-size positioning. So that's been a bit of a bright spot to keep us warm in these cold temperatures, and that's just been this week. Calendar is as we've posted in the text comments, and all of that has simply been what it's always been. We'll see which way the markets and various markets break as far as a delta positioning. But for now, that has simply been what it's always been. It's simply been our thoughts, not yours, for whatever the heck day it is. As always, stay safe, trade well, and remember that love doesn't cost a dime.